Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I turned 18 on a Monday, so cold the wind felt like it had teeth. The woman at the front desk handed me a pen with a clearance sticker still stuck to it. I signed the release forms on a clipboard that had probably seen 100 kids come and go. My name was last on the list. Rice stood on the porch with his sketchbook clutched tight against his chest, shivering hard enough to shake the pencil in his hand. He looked like he might run if someone so much as opened a car door too fast. He was listed as Race Harkness, too, though neither of us had a drop of real family in the name. Harkness was just what they typed on my birth certificate when no one else showed up. Calloway wasn't in our file. Not once. Quick note. Before we start, share in the comments how's your day going and where are you joining from. Thanks, and let's continue. I pulled him into a hug and felt his fingers clutch the back of my hoodie like he thought I might disappear mid-sentence. I'll come back for you, I told him, same as I'd been saying since Christmas. No matter what, no matter how long it takes, I'm not leaving you in this place. You promise? His voice was small, like he didn't want the wind to carry it too far, like he'd ask the sun if it really planned to rise tomorrow. I don't make promises I don't keep. He nodded, blinking hard. I gave him my old work gloves, the ones with the stitched wrists and duct tape over the thumbs. Keep drawing, I said. You're gonna need those hands. He pressed something into my jacket pocket and wouldn't look at me. For luck, he mumbled. It was a folded sketch of a sycamore tree, one he'd drawn from memory after a field trip to the county arboretum. He'd made the lines soft around the edges like it was swaying. Out on the curb, the state-issued duffel felt like nothing. 2 shirts, a pair of scuffed boots, a small cross on a black cord I'd had since I could walk. But it weighed heavy, too, with all the goodbyes I couldn't bring myself to say. I walked to the transit station and sat on a hard plastic bench with my cracked phone, scrolling yard work ads until my thumb went numb. I circled anything that offered room and board. Those were gold. Lifelines. I didn't have references. I didn't even have a last paycheck, but I had calluses and no fear of rain. One place stood out, a big house across town, looking for a groundsman with references. I didn't have the references, but I figured I'd show up anyway. Most folks write you off over the phone. Face to face. You got a shot. The house manager, Mrs. Hollis, met me at the front gate like she'd rather be anywhere else. Her suit was too clean for the driveway gravel, and she had this look, like I'd tracked mud onto her marble floors just by breathing. I said, "Ma'am," and kept my chin up. She asked who I was connected to, like a man needed a sponsor just to knock on a door. I said, "Nobody, just looking to work." She made a note in some folder I wasn't going to see and pointed me back toward the sidewalk like she was doing me a favor by not calling security. I didn't argue. I turned, hands in my pockets, and told myself I'd find another gate. Might have to climb it, but I'd find it. I'd promised Race. That meant I was coming through, one way or another. That night I paid $40 for a weekly motel room that smelled like bleach and old sweat. I set my alarm for 5:10 in the morning, the kind of time a man picks when he's got no margin for failure and nothing left to lose. I didn't sleep much, but I kept the sketch in my pocket and the cross under my shirt. That was enough. I was going to find the next door, and I was going to knock louder. I woke up to a sticky ceiling fan and the sound of someone arguing through the motel wall, washed my face in cold water, trimmed my stubble at a gas station sink, and used the back of my hand to slick down the sides of my hair. My shirt still smelled like state detergent, but I figured it looked clean enough. I caught the number 32 bus and rode until the city turned quieter, older, with cracked sidewalks and yards that still had clotheslines. The house sat behind a row of trimmed hedges that didn't look like they wanted to bite. 2 stories, stone trim, yard tidy but not plastic perfect. I walked up slow, keeping my boots quiet on the brick path. My hands were sweating, but I didn't wipe them. Let a man shake the truth. Devin Calloway opened the door himself. Early 30s, clean shirt, hands like he still worked them. He looked at me for a beat, then held out his hand. "You the one from the ad?" I nodded. "Cole Harkness." He shook my hand like he meant it. "Devin. I run 3 garden centers and do a little woodwork when I get the time. Need someone who can handle sprinklers, trim hedges, fix the odd busted hinge. Pays not much, but it's steady. Room over the garage, 3 meals, Sundays off." I didn't say anything, just kept listening. He added, "Don't take anything that isn't yours." That part landed flat and quiet between us. I just nodded once, firm. "Understood." He stepped aside to let me in. The house was clean, smelled like lemon and varnish. Nothing showy, just careful. His wife came down a minute later. Soraya. Tall, hair pinned back neat, blouse so crisp it looked starched to the bone. She looked at me once, then let her eyes slide to the broom closet behind me like she was checking if I'd already emptied it. A small wooden cross on a black cord rested at her collarbone, same size as mine. I noticed it but didn't think twice about it. She didn't say much. Devin walked me out back, showed me the garden beds, the irrigation timer, the half-fixed gate with a latch too loose to hold in wind. I crouched, checked the hinge, and said I could set it proper with a new anchor and a couple washers. "You any good with power tools?" he asked. "I've built fence runs and split stone stairs," I said. "Grew up fixing what no one else wanted to touch." He gave a small nod and walked back toward the house. I followed. Inside, a little boy in a T-Rex shirt ran into my leg and bounced back like a pinball. "Hey, do you know how to make a stick whistle?" I smiled for the first time all day. "Sure do. Got a pocket knife?" He beamed and ran to the kitchen yelling for someone named Mavis. A moment later, a calm voice called out, "Let him use yours, Lenny." She stepped into view, dark curls pulled back, steady gaze that clocked me like a mechanic listening to an engine. Mavis. She had the kind of calm that didn't need to be loud. Lenny came back with the knife, and I took a scrap of willow from the yard pile, shaved it down, popped the bark, and showed him how to blow through it. The sound it made was shrill and perfect. He lit up like Christmas. "Say thank you," Mavis told him. He did, then launched straight into asking about birds. "Do hawks eat squirrels? Can you train a crow? Do robins hate snow?" I answered what I could, laughing as I handed the knife back. Mavis gave me a look, not quite approval, but close enough to carry. Devin led me to the kitchen table, where the light hit clean through the window. He laid out a simple contract. Name, duties, room and board, flat pay. I printed Cole Harkness as neat as I could. My hand didn't shake. Soraya slid over a sheet of paper with house rules, 10 lines, all sharp. No guests, no food in rooms, no borrowing. "I don't borrow," I said, folding the paper. "I fix what's broken." She didn't smile, but she didn't argue either. Joyce came in while I was carrying my duffel upstairs. Middle-aged, tough shoulders, cleaner's smock, gave me a look like she'd seen this story before and didn't buy the happy ending. I nodded and said, "Ma'am." She didn't answer, just went about her business. The room over the garage was long and narrow, clean enough. Window faced the oaks, 1 peg on the wall. I hung my cross there. Felt like a space a man could build from. I didn't waste time unpacking. I headed back down and grabbed the broom, swept the front walk till the bricks looked like they'd been installed that morning. Fixed the gate latch with a wedge from my pocket tool and some elbow grease. Edged a flower bed so sharp it looked printed. Devin passed by as I was rinsing the last pile of dirt off the path. He didn't say a word, just glanced at the line I'd cut, gave a half nod, and kept walking. That was better than praise. I stood up, snapped the rag clean, and went back out to the yard. The sky was the color of a hammerhead, hard and gray. But the gate didn't swing loose anymore. Next morning, before the sun was even up, I raked the courtyard gravel into clean ripples. Not deep lines, just enough that if someone messed it up, you'd notice. It was the kind of detail most people walk past, but I've learned the difference between something good enough and something done right. By the second week, I'd gotten sick of watching the irrigation system flood the beds. The timer was running dumb. I cut off the water, dug down through layers of dirt and old roots, and found the issue. A cracked elbow joint, cheap plastic. Replaced it with a better one and set the watering zones by where the sun actually hit. Not just guesswork from some contractor 10 years ago. Lenny tagged along most mornings, dragging a plastic dump truck behind him like it was on a job site. He pointed at worms wriggling out of the ground and asked, "Why do they do that when it rains?" I told him, "Same reason you don't cross the street when the cars are moving. It's easier when things slow down." He looked at the worms like they were brave, then scooped one up and gave it a name. Mavis kept track of his routines like it was science. Naps at 2, phonics at 4, reading on the porch when it didn't rain. I figured out her rhythm pretty fast. Blow leaves before reading time, pull the weeds in the side bed while he was down, no loud tools before 10. She never asked, but she noticed. That mattered. Soraya was testing me. I caught her counting the gas cans twice in 1 week. One time I watched her check the pruner box to see if anything was missing. Another day she looked at the soles of my boots as I came in, checking for mud. I passed all of it. Not because I was trying to impress her, but because I like rules I can see and follow. By the third Saturday, Devin handed me a job that wasn't on the original list. The backyard fence post was leaning bad. He said, "If you can fix it, fix it. Don't make it pretty. Make it last." I reset it with concrete from the tool shed and braced it while it dried. Next weekend, he handed me a sticky kitchen door and said it needed planing. Then a week later, I was building a cedar sandbox from a flat pack kit, while Lenny tossed toy shovels into it before it was done. One time, I botched a hinge cut on a shed door, split the grain, and cracked the mount. Could have blamed the wood, but I knew I rushed it. I went out and bought a new bracket with my own money and asked Devin if I could try again. He looked at the new part, nodded once and said, "Do it right this time." That was the first time someone corrected me without treating me like a screw-up. He didn't doubt me, just expected better. Felt like trust, and that stuck. Joyce told me one day while we both stood at the kitchen sink rinsing out rags that the last one, Estella, was like family. She kept the place humming, Joyce said. Left fast, though. Had to. Lenny still asked for her sometimes. Later that week, I found the scrap pile by the garage and built a simple teepee frame under the maple. Just a few poles lashed together with cord and lined with leaves. Lenny crawled in and named it Base. He started bringing his sketch pads and toy animals there. Sometimes I'd look over and see him just sitting inside it, humming. One afternoon, I fired up the leaf blower around 2:40. 5 minutes later, the neighbor, Keeler, flagged me down across the driveway like I'd committed a felony. "You got no respect for nap time," he said, scowling. "Didn't know you were on a schedule," I said, keeping it level. "I'll shift the run next time." He grumbled something about house help, then shuffled off. I adjusted the blower schedule and, next day, dropped off cookies Joyce had baked, leftovers in a plastic tub. He took them without a word and sniffed the lid like it might explode. He never said thank you. Over time, I caught bits and pieces of the bigger picture. Soraya had a sister. People spoke about her like she was a wound, quiet and painful. Joyce and Mavis traded glances when her name floated up. "Old hurt," Joyce muttered once. I didn't ask questions. I just stored the pieces. I kept my head down, tools clean, mouth shut. Slowly, the place started leaning on me. Not loud, not official, but in the way a house learns to depend on its hinges. Quiet pressure. I like that kind. At night, I'd sit on the outside stairs and text Rice. Told him about the treehouse plans Lenny was cooking up. The way the maple shaded the lawn like an umbrella in the afternoons. I told him I'd pinned the sycamore sketch over my light switch, and it looked like it belonged there. I didn't ask how things were on his end. If he wanted to tell me, he would. Mavis passed me once on the landing while I was typing out a message. She didn't pry, just nodded at the phone and said, "He lucky you still reach." "When I say it, I mean it," I said. She looked at me a second longer than she had to, then kept walking. I tucked the phone in my jacket, stood up, and stepped back into the dark. The gravel ripples in the courtyard were still neat. I'd made them that morning, and they held. I was trimming the low hedge along the front walkway, watching the morning light flick across the windows, when I heard her car stall. One sharp cough, then nothing. I looked up in time to catch Mavis easing it off the curb with her hazard lights blinking like panic signals. She stayed in the driver's seat for a second, gripping the wheel like it might bolt if she let go. She didn't call me. She called the house line. I didn't wait. Dropped my shears in the grass and jogged across the yard. "You all right?" She didn't look over. Just said, "I'm good." I called the office. "Engine light?" I asked, already glancing under the hood. She didn't answer. I don't fix engines, but I know how to move problems. Pulled out my phone, texted a guy who runs a landscape crew 2 streets over, Jaden. Owed me a favor from a time I helped dig out ivy roots in heat that made men quit. 15 minutes later, his trailer was pulling the busted car into the Callaway's driveway. Mavis thanked him twice, then looked at me like I was the one she didn't know how to place. "Thank you," she said, quiet. Not cold, like she meant it and wasn't used to saying it. "Glad I was close," I told her, brushing dirt off my shirt. Lenny had a meltdown that afternoon over some new phonics lesson. He threw his pencil across the table and shoved his workbook onto the floor, then curled up in the corner with his arms over his ears. Soraya started to step in, but Mavis waved her off with a calm hand and stayed close without crowding. Next day, I dragged an old shipping box out of the garage, cut 2 windows in the sides, taped a headlamp to the roof, and lined the bottom with towels, called it a quiet crate, and told Lenny it was a fort for when your brain gets loud. He crawled in, flipped on the headlamp, and just breathed. Stayed in there for 20 minutes with a book and didn't once throw it. Mavis saw it and didn't say anything right away, but the next week, she told me his teacher was trying the same thing in class. "It's helping," she said, wiping down the porch rail. He sat longer, didn't flinch when the bell rang. We started talking in the spaces between other things. She'd mention her brother doing electrical apprentice hours in the city. I'd tell her about grafting trees at the county park, the way certain barks take to others like they were waiting their whole lives to be joined. She told me the mulch we were using was too light for the wind we'd get next week. I agreed and said I'd swap it for cedar. There was something about her. She could smooth a moment without killing the truth in it. One night, Devin and Soraya were mid-argument in the kitchen. Something about a donor list and who was being too selective. Mavis walked in, poured 2 mugs of coffee, slid the chairs back to a wider angle, and just stood there like a lighthouse. A minute later, they were sitting. 5 minutes after that, they were laughing. Late that Friday, I came in from releveling a sagging walkway stone. Mavis was standing at the island, staring at her phone like it had insulted her. She didn't notice me until I set my gloves down. "You good?" I asked, wiping the back of my neck. She nodded once, then said, "My brother's van got towed." She didn't dress it up. "He'll lose his union slot if he misses Monday. Tow yard wants it out by noon, cash only." I didn't blink, just said, "How much?" She looked up fast. "I didn't tell you to." "I'm not handing you anything," I cut in, "but I might know a way." She hesitated, then nodded, just once. I stepped outside and called Jaden again, told him I'd give him 2 full Saturday mornings, tools included, if he'd put the release fee on his card today. He didn't even argue. Said, "You sure?" I said, "You still got that fence line covered in ivy?" He laughed and said he'd text the receipt in 10. I walked back in and handed her the slip. She didn't take it right away. Just stared at me like I'd passed her some kind of test she didn't remember giving. "You didn't have to?" "Didn't ask to," I said. She took the paper with both hands. "Thank you." This time, the words landed heavier. Next morning, I was back to trimming boxwood, keeping the lines straight. She passed by on the way to the store with Lenny and nodded. Nothing else. But for once, when I set my clippers down, my hands didn't feel empty. It was hot enough that the rake handles burned my palms by noon. I just finished clearing the clippings from the back path when I noticed the house had gone still. No music, no chatter from the kitchen, no Lenny dragging a stick across the railing like a xylophone. Devin was out checking inventory at the supplier. Soraya had left in a white dress for some kind of charity lunch. Mavis took Lenny to the park for story time under the gazebo. The place felt like a movie set, waiting on action. I headed into the garage to sweep out the corner behind the tool bench. That's when I saw it again, sitting there with the car cover half off like someone had started pulling it and got distracted. Slate blue, spotless. The kind of convertible you only see in car calendars or wedding shoots. Keys still hung on the hook by the workbench. Top was down. Air inside still smelled faintly like polish and leather. I told myself I'd just nudge it forward a foot to sweep the grit, not to drive it, just enough to keep the wheels off the dust line. I didn't even grab the keys. I just slid into the seat slow, careful not to smudge anything. Then I looked at the wheel. Polished. Center emblem smooth beneath my thumb. I gripped it, not tight, just enough to feel what it might be like if things were different. If this was mine, if I belonged. The console between the seats was slightly open. I spotted a pair of sunglasses tucked inside. Black, mirrored lenses, heavy frame. The expensive kind that looks like it comes with an ego. I wouldn't wear them out in public if you paid me. But in that moment, I reached for them anyway. They had weight, like they cost more than everything in my duffel. I turned them over in my hand, felt the arms, tried them on for half a second. Dumb move. I didn't even like how they felt. Too much attention. I went to put them back, but they slid and I fumbled. They bounced once on the leather and almost hit the footwell. I caught them before they clattered and scratched. No damage. Still, my heart was pounding. So I tucked them into my pocket just for a second, just to keep them safe while I got up. I moved too fast. My knee caught the bottom of the dash hard, and the whole car shuddered. Pain shot up my leg and made my hand jerk. I hissed, held onto the seat to keep from cursing out loud. That's when the garage door creaked. Devin stepped in like someone who already knew the punchline to a joke he hated. He stopped just a foot inside. His eyes swept across the car, me in the seat, the half-pulled cover, and the hook where the keys still hung. He didn't yell. That's what made it worse. "Out of the car," he said, plain, no edge, no kindness. I stepped out slow, hands empty, breath shallow. His gaze flicked to the console, bare. He looked at the empty spot, looked at me. Then Soraya's heels clicked in behind him. She froze when she saw the scene, arms folded like a steel gate. I reached for the glasses in my pocket, stupidly, as if just showing them would fix it. I didn't take them. That's when Keeler's voice cut in through the open side door. "Thought I saw house help sniffing around the garage," he said. His tone had that tight little smile he always wore when he thought he was being clever. Soraya's face shut like a slammed cabinet. No surprise. Just confirmation. Devin didn't flinch. Didn't look at me. Just worked his jaw once like something cracked behind his teeth. "Pack your things," he said. 4 words, no questions, no chance. I wanted to speak, wanted to tell the truth, that I'd panicked, that I was trying to protect something that wasn't even mine, but the moment was already gone. I'd watched it leave. I nodded once, walked past both of them without brushing shoulders, climbed the garage stairs like I was marching into a sentence already written. In my room, I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, pulled the sunglasses from my pocket, and stared at them like they might dissolve if I looked long enough. My cross hung against my collarbone, solid and cold. My fingers curled around it. I didn't cry, but I felt that ache settle in my ribs. The one that comes when you know someone didn't just lose faith in you. They never had it to begin with. I didn't steal, and I didn't lie. But I looked exactly like the kind of kid they warned each other about in whispers, and I'd made it easy for them to believe it. I set the glasses in my palm. They reflected my face back at me, small, warped in the lens, and I knew I'd just handed them every reason to send me back to nothing. I zipped the duffel slow, careful not to crush the edges of Rice's sketch. I'd folded it once, just enough to slide between two shirts I'd rolled tight. The gloves he gave me were still wedged in the side pocket, worn at the seams, duct tape holding on like memory. I stared at the sunglasses one last time, too clean, too loud, too far from anything I needed, and placed them gently at the top of the stairs with a note. Didn't take. Just panicked. Joyce knocked once but came in like she'd been doing it all her life. She didn't ask what happened. Just looked at the bag, then looked at my face. People get loud when they're scared, she said, brushing a hand down the front of her apron. Doesn't mean they don't care. Just means they got no practice. I didn't trust myself to answer, so I nodded. She stepped closer and squeezed my shoulder. Her grip was dry and firm, like someone giving you part of their spine just for a second. Mavis stood in the doorway, arms folded tight against herself, eyes rimmed red, but dry. She didn't ask questions either. If you need a ride, she said, voice even, I'll drive. That landed harder than any speech. I swallowed back the lump in my throat and muttered, thanks, because anything more would have broken something I couldn't afford to lose. They both stepped back to give me space. I sat down again on the stripped mattress, pulled the cord of my cross to check it was still there, then stood. I'd just slung the duffel over my shoulder when Soraya stepped in. No knock. Door shut behind her like it had its own orders. She wasn't holding a phone or a paper, just something small in her hand. She didn't blink. Why do you have a cross like mine? She asked. I didn't answer right away, just looked at her hand. She was holding the cross she always wore, wooden, smoothed by years of skin and time, strung on the same kind of black cord as mine. She turned it in her palm and showed me the back. There, carved just deep enough to catch the light, was a tiny rose. A rose with one petal chipped and a dot underneath, like a tear. I touched my own chest, felt the same weight I'd worn since I could remember. Because it's mine, I said. I've had it since I was little, since before I knew anything else. She stepped forward, slow, and turned hers again, studying the rose like it might say more if she looked long enough. Then she caught it, the small maker's mark under the leaf, just a shallow line and a dot, off-center, almost invisible. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Show me yours. I pulled mine from under my shirt. The cord dragged against my neck as I lifted it, and the cross dropped into my palm with a thud, louder than it should have been. She leaned closer, looked at the rose on mine. Same curl, same off-kilter leaf, same faint nick in the bottom petal. She sucked in a breath sharp enough to slice a room. This one was Hallie's, she said, clutching hers tight now. My sister. I kept it when she disappeared. She didn't move, just stared at me like she was standing in two places at once, right here and back in whatever memory that cross dragged her into. She ran off young, Soraya said, voice cracking at the edges but still standing. Left home before she was 20. Wouldn't say where she was going. The family got hard after that. Things stopped getting said. People stopped being asked. I didn't interrupt. I didn't know how. I was 6 years younger than her. Always felt like I was chasing a shadow. One day she was gone, and the story just went quiet. She glanced down at her hands, then back up. They told me she didn't have the baby, said she made a decision, and that was it. But I never believed it. Not really. I couldn't prove it, though. So I just stopped asking. My mouth went dry. I tried to speak twice before I got the words out. I don't know much, I said. Never met her. All I know is I was born into the system. No names, no visitors, just a wooden cross they said was mine. I kept it because it was the only thing that felt like it had a past. Soraya took a shaky step backward and leaned against the desk, arms still locked like she was bracing for a second hit. Hallie, she said, just the name. That word alone twisted something in the air, like it belonged to both of us now. I never thought I'd hear her name in this house again, she added, and now you're saying it like it's yours too. I nodded, slow. It is. We stood there a long second, not frozen, just still, like someone had opened a door in a house neither of us realized had been locked. I think we need to talk, she finally said. Her voice had softened, but not lost its spine. But first, I need to call Devin. She turned for the door, then looked back. You're not packing anything else until we figure this out. I didn't move. I just watched her walk out, cross still clenched in her fist like it was the first true thing she'd held in years. We walked down the stairs slow. Me and Soraya. No words between us, just the sound of her steps on hardwood and mine behind hers. When we hit the bottom landing, she didn't hesitate, just turned toward the kitchen like this wasn't the strangest day of her life. Devin stood at the island, shoulders tense, one hand resting beside his coffee mug. The sunglasses sat there too, lenses facing up, untouched since I left them with that note. He looked like a man halfway into a sentence he couldn't finish. Before he could start, I spoke. I panicked, I said. I should have owned it in the moment. I didn't, but I'm not a thief. He looked at me, then at Soraya, then at the crosses we both still wore. His whole posture shifted, like someone had cut a string he didn't know he was pulling tight. His jaw softened, eyes changed. The anger wasn't gone, but the certainty of it was. You can stay, he said, quiet. No speech, no conditions. I nodded once. I will, I said. But we have to tell Lenny. He deserves the truth. Soraya agreed without blinking. He heard what happened. He saw how we reacted. We don't let that sit. So we told him. Together. Lenny sat cross-legged on the living room rug, a drawing of birds abandoned beside him. I crouched next to him, voice steady, face calm. I made a mistake, I said. I sat in something that wasn't mine, and I didn't explain myself fast enough. That's on me. Devin stepped in next, but we misunderstood too. We jumped to a wrong conclusion. That's on us. Then Soraya, sharp and clear, added, in this house, nobody gets tossed out without the full story being told. Lenny blinked, then picked up his drawing again. So you're staying? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. That night, Keeler came limping down the drive like he owned the sidewalk. His smirk was thin enough to see through. He opened his mouth like he had something clever lined up, but I stepped out first and met him by the mailbox. You were wrong today, I said, calm. Don't talk about me to my boss again. He raised an eyebrow like I'd surprised him. Didn't know you were so sensitive. I'm not, I said, but I am finished letting you define me. He didn't reply, just shuffled backward and turned toward his porch. From behind the screen door, I caught Mavis watching. She didn't say anything then, just nodded to herself. Later that week, she called it quiet spine. After that, everything started moving fast. Paperwork, home visits, background checks. Soraya didn't wait. She was already calling caseworkers before the week ended. Devin asked me for Race's full name and anything that would help the system connect the dots. By the time spring broke into summer, they'd gotten the house certified. Licensing went through quicker than I thought possible. Maybe it was the name on the application. Callaway carried weight I didn't, but I didn't argue. The placement plan was approved before July. It said Rice would stay here through his 18th birthday, or until he finished high school, whichever came later. On paper, Devin and Soraya were the official licensed resource parents. I wasn't. My name was on the file as adult household member and support person. didn't bother me. I didn't need credit. I just needed him out of that place. When we sat down at the kitchen table with the caseworker, Miss Colby, who'd known me back at the group home, my chair squeaked so bad it felt like punishment. Still, I said what I'd promised. Room, work, guidance, I told her. I'll make sure he gets it. She didn't smile. Never did. But her voice changed just enough when she said my name, like she'd finally put it in the right column. Devin pulled me aside after and said, "If Rice gets into a 2-year program, I'll cover tuition and books. Funds get released after he finishes school or gets his GED." I looked at him straight. "I'm not trying to live off you." He didn't blink. "It's not for you. It's for the kid." Fair enough. Race moved in on a Saturday in August. Heat heavy in the trees. He came with a backpack, a shoebox full of pencils, and 2 pairs of jeans folded so tight I knew he packed them the night before and didn't sleep. I waited by the driveway. When the county car dropped him off, he stepped out slow, eyes wide, trying to take it all in like it might vanish. I didn't hug him, just took his bag and said, "Room's over the garage. You've got my old peg." He looked up. "Where's your stuff?" "Devin moved it last week," I said. "I'm in the guest room now. Hall side." His mouth opened like he wanted to ask more, but he nodded instead. We walked the path together. He kept looking at the garden, the corners of the house, the maple where Base still stood, patched and repaired. "You really stayed," he said. Not a question, just the truth landing out loud. "Yeah," I said. "I told you I would." Rice settled in like he'd always been there. He didn't talk much those first couple weeks, just watched the rhythms. Lenny's wild stories at breakfast, Mavis measuring tea in silence, Soraya checking the pantry like it was a mission. Devin walked him through basic yard safety, tools, edges, heat protocols. But mostly he stuck with me. Painted the trim on the shed, cleaned clippers, helped measure out pea gravel for a path that curved clean through the back garden. The days found a rhythm. Hedges in the morning, school runs, Ford upgrades, fixes that had waited too long now getting crossed off the list. But underneath that work rhythm, there was another one building. Slower, heavier. Family. I felt it in the way Rice placed his sketchbook open on the table and left it there like he wasn't afraid someone might laugh. In the way Soraya stopped double-checking my supply tallies and started asking what I thought we needed next. One evening, she came down from the attic holding a shoebox, old cardboard, stained at the corners. She set it on the dining table and pulled off the lid like it was something alive. Inside were snapshots, faded, some curling at the edges. 2 girls on a porch, one in a sunflower dress, both wearing wooden crosses. The same crosses me and Soraya carried. Her fingers trembled as she passed me the photo. Mine shook too, but I held it still long enough to see the shape of Hallie's smile. Devin stood nearby, hands in his pockets. "We should be careful with Hope," he said, not unkind. I nodded. "You're right," I said, "but I think Hope already moved in and took a chair." Joyce showed up with a letter one afternoon, waving it like it stung her fingers, postmarked from out of state. "From Estela," she said, breath-catching. She remembered something. She opened it in the kitchen while I was cleaning mud from the floor tiles. Inside was a folded note, yellowed with time and notarized in the corner, a photo from a church fair, Soraya's sister, Hallie, pregnant and smiling, a bulletin with a pressed rose sealed in laminate, and a copy of a parish directory listing Verna and Alden, my grandparents, at an old address 2 counties away. "It's not DNA," Joyce said, laying everything out like a map. "But it's enough. This is the paper trail." Soraya's face went still. She never said anything back then. She didn't know what it meant until now, Joyce said. None of us did. The caseworker came the next week for the follow-up. She scheduled a formal home visit and asked me to sign 6 forms. I signed every page without hesitation and kept my phone on loud. in case anything changed. Mavis started bringing Race to college info nights. She had a way of breaking down big words into something Rice could chew. "It's a 2-year technical program," she told him one night after a tour. "They'll teach you how to turn sketches into models. CAD stuff, transferable skills." Rice looked at her like she'd offered him a whole new language. Meanwhile, I kept grinding, up before the sun, mended a stone stair that had been wobbling for months, staked a young tree too thin for its spot. Wind kept bruising the bark, dug a bed of hostas from the back corner and moved them into shade where they'd stop scorching. Devin handed me a clipboard on a Wednesday. "You're managing mulch and gravel orders now," he said. "Trust lives in small line items." I nodded. "I'll track everything. I'll get you receipts." He smiled. "Keep them in a coffee can if you have to. I'm not worried." That was how I knew it was real. Not because he gave me a title. He didn't. But because he let go of something small that meant a lot. Soraya still counted tools, still closed the shed with a double check on the lock. But she said my mother's name now without flinching. Once, I heard her say, "Hallie always liked oak trees while pouring tea." Just that. Like it was normal. Mavis and I had something growing too, but slow. She didn't push. I didn't crowd. We moved in the same orbits. Shared morning glances when Lenny spilled juice, laughed when Rais muttered about squirrels chewing his pencils, exchanged weather notes like they were strategy. She didn't need fixing. I didn't need saving. That helped. One afternoon, I found Rice sitting under the maple, sketchbook in his lap. He was drawing Lenny sitting inside base, holding a stick ship with a paper sail taped on. The detail was good, better than I remembered him doing before. He'd made Lenny look older, stronger, like a kid who could be anything. "You kept the shadows soft," I said, crouching beside him. "Yeah," he mumbled. "Didn't want it to look too finished." "You'll know when it's done," I told him. Later that night, I stepped out onto the grass barefoot and watched the oaks throw shade over the yard. The lights inside glowed like a place worth protecting. I stood there, arms folded, thinking not about how long I'd stay, but about what I'd still need to fix. Because that's what makes a place yours. Not the title, not the paperwork. It's the work you leave set true. The seams tightened, the hinges trued, the lines cut clean. So the next person trusts the ground underfoot. It took me all winter. Overtime hours, storm cleanup jobs, hauling busted tree limbs from 3 neighborhoods over. But I finally filled the coffee can. First month's rent and a deposit, in cash. Tucked under a receipt for a busted string trimmer I'd fixed and flipped, I told Devin and Soraya over Sunday stew. Rise knew already. Lenny didn't. "I found a place," I said, keeping it steady. "Small duplex near the park. Needs work, but it's mine." Lenny stopped chewing. "Is Base coming with you?" "No," I said. "Base stays here. That's where the stories are. I'll still be around." Soraya's eyes welled, but she nodded without blinking. "Your mother would want you to build your own place," she said. That hit straight. No hesitation. No wobble. Devin leaned back, wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Foreman slots still open at East Side Garden Center," he said. "Hours are yours to shape." "I'll take it," I said, "on one condition." His brow lifted. "I still want to do 2 mornings a week here. For Lenny, at least till he's used to it." Devin nodded. 3-month trial. See if you can run a crew without dropping the field work. Mavis offered to walk the unit with me the next day. She brought a level, ran her hand along the windowsills, tapped a knuckle against the drywall. "Bookshelf here would kill the echo," she said. She was right. I circled the spot with chalk like I was claiming it. I moved in on a Friday. 2 friends from my old park crew helped. We had a borrowed dolly, 1 ratchet strap, and a backseat full of tools. Rice showed up an hour later with a sketch of the front steps, drawn on printer paper, and taped it to the fuse box. "Now you can't lose home," he said. Joyce came by with a mop, handed it to me like a baton, then pointed to a corner I missed. "That's where dust wins, kid." she said, laughing. She stocked the cabinet with spices and left a sticky note on the counter. Clean floors, clean head. I hung my cross by the kitchen sink, put a peg beside it for rice, like always. Habit makes a family feel real even when the rooms are new. Monday morning, I grabbed my coat on the way out and felt something in the pocket, reached in and pulled out a smooth stone, round and flat. Base's stone. Lenny must have tucked it in without a word. I carried it to work like it was a medal. That week, I passed Keeler on the sidewalk. He didn't sneer, just nodded. I nodded back. Not a friend, just a man who'd finally learned my name. Late Thursday, Soraya called. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I think I'm ready," she said. "Ready for what?" "To visit two people I haven't seen in a long time." I didn't ask who. I already knew. "Do you want me to come with you?" She paused. "Not yet. I need you to go first. If it goes bad, we'll decide together what to do next." I looked out the window. Wind was moving the curtains just enough to make the room feel like it was breathing. "I'll go," I said. "You'll know how it goes before I even get back." The siding was sun-faded, peeling at the edges. The porch rail wobbled under my hand, like it needed something I hadn't come to give. I stood there a second longer than I should have, then knocked. Verna opened the door like she already knew it was me. Her eyes were swollen but dry. She had that look I'd seen in men after a hurricane, hope and fear, hanging off the same breath. "I'm Cole," I said. "Cole Harkness, Hallie's son." She didn't step back, didn't grab her chest or whisper something holy, just said my mother's name like it was both a prayer and a punishment. "Hallie." From behind her, Alden came into view. Slow, hand on the wall, one step at a time. His frame was still solid, but his face, his eyes, looked older than any paper record. He studied me like he'd been rehearsing it in his sleep. We sat at a small table covered in a plastic cloth with strawberries on it, faded where the sun hit. I pulled my cross off and set it in the center. Verna stared, then slid hers beside it. She asked one question. "Is there a mark under the rose leaf?" I turned mine over. The light caught it. One nick, one dot under the leaf. Her breath hitched. Both hands went to her mouth. "Same hand," she whispered. "The church woodworker. He carved a small batch for the parish fair. That's it. That's enough." No one said anything for a long time. Then they talked. Told me what they did wrong, how the fear of neighbors had turned into rules, how those rules cost them a daughter, and a granddaughter they hadn't even known existed. I didn't flinch. I didn't nod. I let it hang there, solid as the table between us. I wasn't there to patch their porch or write their forgiveness speech. I was there to tell them I was alive, that their younger daughter had made something out of nothing, that I carried her with me, even if she'd left with nothing but a cross and a name. Verna's hands trembled. "Is there any way back from what we did?" I looked at her straight. Maybe, but slow. No special treatment. Time owed is paid in time. Alden stood when I did. His hand came out, shaking but sure. I took it. It felt like two men agreeing to rebuild something heavy, one board at a time. Back at my place, I hung the cross back on its peg, sent Rice a photo of the porch rockers, then messaged Lenny a shot of the stone riding in my coat pocket. I cracked the window before bed. A train rolled through the valley like a low drum. Steady, constant. Like a promise you only make once, but keep forever. Next week, I stopped by the house like always. Devin handed me the sunglasses I'd once nearly ruined everything over. "Kept these on the shelf to remind me not to jump too fast," he said. I pulled the smooth stone from my pocket. "I keep this for the same reason." Soraya passed through with a basket of folded towels. "Family's something you do more than something you're called," she said without stopping. "I understand now," I told her. Mavis met me at the edge of the garden. "Got plans Saturday?" "Fixing a neighbor's gate. Then coffee." She smiled. I know a place with croissants worth the line. On Sunday, Rice showed me a bench sketch. Simple lines, solid joints, a small carved rose in the corner. For base, he said. I nodded. We'll build it strong. If there's revenge in any of this, it's quiet. I walked back through the doors that once shut in my face, set my own terms, kept my word, and made them see me without asking to be seen. I don't carry grudges, but I don't rewrite the past either. I let people feel the weight of their choices, and when I leave now, I leave things better. Straight rails, tight corners, clean edges, so the next man knows the ground he's standing on is solid. It's not glory, it's work. And I know how to work. Looking back, I should have known the road would bend toward people who were mine. I wouldn't have believed it then, but I believe it now. I promised a kid I'd come back for him. I kept it. One last thing before you scroll. Have you ever had to prove yourself to people who already made up their minds about you? If that hit close, please tap the hype to help this story reach more folks who might need it. And if you haven't yet, hit like and subscribe. It's one click, but it means a lot to us. Drop a comment too, even just good story or your own thoughts. I'd love to hear how it landed for you.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.